Academy on Computers. This time, computer games and simulations. And among the players, of course, is that all-star Jim Butterfield. And even I knew before the Academy began that the computers were games. My question now is why?
They have a lot of things going for them that make them very good players. For example, they're very interactive. They'll tend to respond to what you type in. They motivate you very well. People want to win. They want to pit themselves against the computer. They can play strategy against you, or for that matter, if it's not a strategy game, they can take care of the bookkeeping and other things going along with it. And, of course, with a computer, you have a large variety of input devices that let you control the interact world of it.
All right, before we talk about computers and simulations, maybe we better define simulation.
Simulation is an imitation of some sort of an event. It might perhaps be a real event, or it could be something from or fantasy. Whatever it is, it tries to put together the event, create it almost as if it were happening, so that you can try your hand at it and see right away what the results of your action can be. It's the sort of thing whereby with practice on a simulation, you can know a great deal about the real-world event that you're having.
And all of the elements that make it good for games work equally well with simulations?
Yes, the simulation can also be very, very highly motivating. You'll want to win. You'll want to make it come out very, very well. Simulations are very good in schools, but they're also gaining increased acceptance in business, government, and for training personnel for learning how to cope with given situations. Many of the elaborate simulations are on mainframe computers, not too many on micros at the moment.
Oh, why is that? Is that because you need more powerful computers to handle simulations?
Very much the case, yes.
All right, you mentioned business. Are there any good business simulators on micros?
There are a number of financial planning packages that allow you to put up the figures that you think you'll see in the future and see what happens when you change investment and other things like that. But they're probably not simulations in that you don't see the system interact as a consequence of the actions you take. I have a simple business simulation here that I can show you, Jack. They're still relatively uncommon on the small computers, but I think it will illustrate the sort of thing that I've been saying.
All right, what does it look like?
Okay, well, this simulates the effective manufacturing thing. We'll say no to one instruction, and you're running a small factory which is making a weekly product which has a very high warehousing cost, so you don't want to be caught with too much inventory, but you also get penalized if you don't make enough around. So we have a very strong season starting in 4 weeks. Now, at past, production was 350 units. Our demand was for 299. We have 73 units on hand, and they're expensive to warehouse. And so now we have to decide. We have a forecast of 310 for the next period. How many do we want to produce?
I'm running the factory. All right, let's say 300.
Okay, let's say 300. And what we find out in reality, our production was 300, our demand was 323. You see, our forecast wasn't accurate. And now we can see what's happened. Our inventory is building up, but not terribly badly, but peak season starts in 3 weeks.
Well, I better say 500.
Yeah, we better step up production to see what happens. And in fact, the demand was still fairly low. Quite a big inventory. We're starting to pay it. Now, we're still well under budget. We're almost 3 units or dollars under budget. So peak season's only away. Start thinking about that.
I better say another 500.
Better say another 500 units. Well, that's maybe a little light, but here we go. We now have built up our inventory to 342 units. We haven't lost any sales yet. We're paying a lot of warehousing, but the peak season starts in 1 week, and our forecast for next week is 1,400 units. You can't even cover that with full production of 1,000 inventory on hand. So we're going to pay a penalty.
But I better make 1,000.
You better make 1,000 for this one, but even so, you probably won't fill. Okay, we're paying overtime too, by the way, and we see that we lost 322 sales, and now your budget is starting to look pretty bad. This is the sort of thing that you'll do, not just to learn how to run a factory, but also decision-making, and besides which, interpersonal skills. This practice is often performed by a team of people grouped around the computer saying, what should we do next? Joe, do you think we should up production now? They would discuss it. They'd learn interpersonal skills. Many things besides the obvious simulation, which is that of production and warehousing, that can be achieved with this sort of thing.
So I got fired, or I should have been, and this kind of competition.
Your job's on the line right now, Jack.
Right, okay. Thanks, Jim. Simulations are appearing more and more in our schools, and their arrival has prompted many questions about their use in the classroom. Rocky's Boots is a challenging simulation. And Larry Noonan, who is a resource teacher and an author of a recent textbook on computer literacy, has joined us in the studio to talk about the use of Rocky's Boots. Jim?
Larry, I'd like to ask you about this program. I gather that it was given an award as one of the 5 best pieces of software produced in 1982. Do you think that was a fair award, and why do you think so?
I think it's a fair award. It's a very good program. It simulates some of the more difficult things that a computer does in its logic gates and its other components that make up computer circuitry.
It teaches about computers?
It teaches about what's happening inside the computer.
I see. Can we have a look at the program?
Okay, well, we're going to look at one part of the program right now. It is made up of a number of different parts, and most of the parts are instructions for the student. This is one of those. Here we have a logic gate, which is an OR gate, and it's got 2 inputs, here and here.
Now, I know the OR gate because of its shape. How does the student know that that was an OR gate?
Well, they'll be shown and told that this is an OR gate, and to remember this basically.
Okay.
Now, we can put electricity on this particular OR gate, and this little orange or yellow box here is electricity. It's also our cursor. When we do that, we get electricity flowing through the gate. If we move up to one of the other inputs, we also get electricity. So an OR gate allows us to put electricity on either or, the 2 things that are there. If we look at a different type, and the students would be asked to do this, we have an AND gate. And an AND gate is a little different. If we put electricity on one of the inputs, nothing happens.
No output.
If we put it on the other one, again, nothing happens. We must put the electricity on both inputs in order to get electricity flowing out of the AND gate.
And then we see it energized. What age students is this program for?
Well, it's recommended for people from age 7 up to adulthood. And I feel, though, that anyone using it should be familiar with the computer, and it would help a lot if they had a little of background with gates and the inputs of the computer.
So 7 years and up would do it now?
7 years and up would probably be all right. I haven't tried it with 7-year-olds, though.
Okay, now we can see that this program teaches the skills of logic, of problem solving, and of electricity. I'm just wondering, how do you fit a program like this into the classroom? When do you use it?
Well, I'd use it in computer literacy classes. If the teacher has a number of computers in the classroom, each student could be using the program, and they could test at their own speed.
What are the children's reaction to this program?
They love it. They love it. If you're using it in the classroom, though, with only one computer, then the teacher would probably demonstrate it first to the class, and then the class or the students would have the computer at the back and work in groups of 1 or 2 on it.
Wouldn't that be distracting to the class if you had a group working on a computer?
No, I don't think so. The classes that I've used this program in have had the computer in there for a number of other purposes, and therefore the computers are accepted as part of the equipment.
How long would a student spend working on this program?
Well, I would say that up to 2 weeks would be a good amount of time.
That would be for the whole thing, all 6 parts?
For the whole thing. In the classes that I've tried this particular program in, I've only got one computer, and almost all the students were able to get up to the final part, which is Rocky's part. That's the part I'm going to demonstrate next.
Okay.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Okay, good. We'd like to see that. You have a little setup to do here?
Okay, I have to pick a game from a list. And we're going to choose a game which is called Diamonds or Circles.
Okay.
And then we're going to go into a room which allows us to construct. We're set a problem. The problem is build a machine, a logic machine, that will pick and kick, using Rocky's boot here, all of the shapes that are diamonds or circles. And as you can see, all the diamonds and circles have positive values. It's a game as well. We get 24 points. And if we do, we win. We could get fewer points by having the sensors, which are these, sense something incorrect, such as a diamond, such as a triangle, and then we get a negative value. So let's build the machine. We've already taken AND gates and OR gates and a number of other things. We'll go into a room and we'll pick up an OR gate.
You're moving that around?
We're moving it around. And we can deposit it here by pressing the space bar. We've made one connection. We're going up now and get a wire to complete our connection. And then bring it down. we have now a machine. We'll just connect Rocky's boot to it, and then we can activate it and see if it actually works. So we'll do that now. And notice that the shapes file out and they come back. The circle is in the sensing area. It is sensed, electricity flows, and the circle is booted, and we get 6 points. And you see them accumulating here. Now, a cross is coming in. The cross will be sensed. Nothing will happen. The same for a triangle. But here comes a diamond. And again,
you can see that the gate is energized under the boot kick.
So the purpose of this game is to simulate what is happening inside the computer in the logic gates. And there are much more complicated games that we have. And the students would get into those as they went along.
I see, and this is just one of many challenges that the student can be presented with.
Yes, there's a whole series of them.
The student will have to build his or her own machine.
That's right.
I see. What sort of a background would a teacher need to be able to use one of these in the classroom?
Well, I think a teacher should be familiar with the operation of the computer, how to turn the computer going, which is fairly obvious, I think. But also, I think, a little bit of knowledge about what logic gates are, and that type of thing would be of definite help. The teacher might have to give a little assistance to the students if they're having problems.
I see. Very good. And here's Rocky doing his little dance.
He's doing his dance because we totaled 24, and we built our machine properly.
That's the reward you get for a perfect score.
That's right.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. 2 more guests joining Larry and Jim, and we'll be looking at some games right after this.
Academy participants. As you know, getting the most from the Academy experience involves more than just watching the programs. The first issue of the newsletter contained lists of individuals and organizations that you can contact for help and advice, and clubs and users groups you may want to join. Also, don't forget about our hotline every Saturday and Sunday morning from 9 to noon. Because of the volume of mail we've been getting, we're devoting most of Newsletter 3 to answering as many questions as we can.
We have with us in the studio Rick Madge, who's a computer games designer, Ian Chadwick, a computer magazine editor, and resource teacher Larry Noonan, whom we met earlier. How do you, Jim, with our first guest?
Rick, can you tell us something about the game that you have here?
Yeah, this is a 4-part game in which a spy is learning his trade. It involves trying to steal briefcases, blowing up munitions dumps, trying to escape and shoot out robots.
What are you doing then?
Well, in this particular game, I'm trying to steal the briefcase and make it back out of this room without setting off the light beam or running into the floor sensor.
Those things are light beams?
Yes. Now, I just set off the alarm there. Now I have to get out quick before the time runs out.
That's very good. You know this thing.
Yes, I do.
You wrote it.
Now, this game involves shooting up the munitions dump.
That's the munitions dump over on the right-hand side?
Yeah, on the right-hand side. While I'm pointing at, I'll probably get killed.
That's rush hour traffic on the left?
Right. If I run into a truck, I die.
If a truck runs into you?
I die.
Okay, good.
There are various other ways of dying. If I stay too long, a heat-seeker missile will come and get me. But we won't run into that right now.
Is that what guys do when they're training?
I guess so.
Okay.
This is just a novice.
You didn't make it.
No, I did.
You did make it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So we have just another one?
Yeah, this is another part of the same game. This he's trying to shoot out the robots who are trying to capture him.
They don't shoot that.
No, but there's a lot of them.
What happens if the robot catches you?
Well, then I flunked that course and I have to try and pass it later.
Okay. What kind of skills do you need to play a game like this?
You have to have good eye-hand coordination, and you have to be fairly adept with the joystick. You have to be able to move around with some amount of confidence. Also, it tests your patience in some of the games, and just
when people ask you questions when you're playing?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay. Rick, I wonder if you could turn away from the game and ask you, what sort of people was this game written for? Is there any particular kind of person?
Yeah, this was written for a typical action games person who's fairly good with the joystick.
What do you think it takes to make a good action game?
I think it takes good graphics, good sound. I think also it has to be challenging to the point where eventually, as you go up in levels, the computer is better than you. It's a constant struggle to beat the computer.
So you can't win?
That's it.
How come, if you can't win, why would you be interested in the game?
The goal is not to win. The goal is to achieve a higher score or achieve a higher level than you've ever done before. You've got to get to that point where you're a master or a grandmaster.
When did you start writing games?
About 3 years ago.
I see. And how long did it take you to write this one?
This was about 2 months.
I see. And did you get the idea all at once, or did you work on it over a period of time?
Yes and no. I worked on it for a period of time, and then I started getting some good ideas, and I threw them together.
Okay, last question. What language did you write this game in?
This is a machine language.
Why?
It requires a speed, basically far too slow.
Okay, very good. We've just seen an action game. Now I'd like to turn to a different game, one of a little bit of exploration and history. Ian, how are you?
Oh, fine. How are
Can
you?
you tell us about this game that you have here?
This is what's called a fantasy telling game. It's very similar to the board game Dungeons and Dragons. Now I've got a character here, which is the first character in my party. I've got a party of 6, and I'm taking them into a dungeon. And in that dungeon I'm going to meet monsters, find treasures, try to solve a puzzle, try to find my way through the maze. And I'm going to go through this, fighting, etc., to try to make my character stronger, get deeper into the maze, and solve more of the puzzle.
Will they all come back?
Some of them, I don't think all of them will, but hopefully I'll be able to bring some of them back.
Okay, there seem to be a lot of these adventure-type games now. Is there any special reason why they're so appealing?
I think because they take us out of the mundane day-to-day world that we live in, where we go to school, we have to work, we have to fight with bosses, etc., and we can come down and do a dungeon and throw around some magic spells. We can hack at a few dwarves and trolls with swords, and we can suddenly escape out of the ordinary world.
Now, is this really an interactive game, or do you just watch what happens as it goes by?
Well, it really is an interactive game. You have to really be on your toes. You have to watch for creatures that are going to come at you. You have to be able to fight with them. You have to make all the right decisions when you come up to for example, here I came up to a door, now I have to fight a captive.
It's kind of ugly. Does he have a name?
There's 4 orcs.
4 orcs. They're pretty tough. I remember that.
Orcs are generally pretty nasty creatures.
They're pretty nasty creatures. Now, when you first start playing, what happens? You just die right away?
No, in general, you're able to keep a few characters alive. They become a little bit stronger, and you develop those characters so they can separate other parties. And the characters develop different abilities. For example, you can see them fighting here.
We're having quite a battle here.
One of the orcs has fled. Not all the characters die, but the characters you generally like the best, do the best, they're the characters that you use as your role-playing model.
And so you found some treasure, too?
Found some treasure, and now I'm sitting in front of a door. I can probably kick it open. There we go.
Okay, when you're doing this sort of thing, I see single character codes. Is there any reason for that?
Well, partly because it's very easy to use with a single character code. You can see they put all of the different commands on the screen, makes it faster. And since you have to use your brains quickly, you don't want to spend a lot of time hunting and pecking at the keyboard.
But other games let you use English?
Some of them do. Some of them are just single commands.
You can win this game? We get through and say,
yes, there's a reason to be in the maze, but you'll only find the reason by being there in yourself.
I see. So you don't even know what the objective is until you go on there and find out.
Right.
Jim, if I may, I wonder if we could throw the discussion open now, beginning with Larry. And Larry, we saw your use of Rocky's boots earlier in the classroom, and I wonder, now we've seen a couple of different kind of games. As an educator, if you think these games have any place in the schools?
Well, personally, I would enjoy the type of game that Rick showed, but in the school, I would use them in a very limited amount. I would use them, say, to introduce the computer to the student so that he would have, or she would have, a very easy way of getting into the use of the computer and become familiar with it. I would tend to use Ian a little bit more because it requires a lot more thought as far as concentrating on what you're going to do and what you're going to do next.
Ian, I'd like to ask you, what do you think makes a good game?
I think a good challenge with a suitable reward makes a good game. Something that makes the players think a bit, something that uses their functions, makes them have to work at it, and gives them something when they finish the game that makes them feel like they've accomplished something.
Which is a high score, or what?
It can be a high score, can be solving a maze, such as in this game, can be finding a treasure, can be killing monsters, whatever happens to be suitable to the game.
Okay, Rick, what makes a good game?
I think for these, you have to have good graphics, good sound. It has to be challenging. At some point, it always has to be better than you are.
Okay, now are there differences between the kind of games that you find in the arcades and the kind of games that you find in home computers? Rick, what do you think?
Yes, the arcades have approximately a minute and a half allotted to each player before they want to pocket the quarter and go on to the next. So the computer is in an active fight to try and get you off the machine. It's an opponent. At home, you have more leisure space. Even the auction games, something where when you're good, you can play for about 5 minutes.
Do you agree, Ian?
Pretty well, I'd say so. There are a lot of games that you won't find in an arcade, such as chess, a war game, or a fantasy game.
Okay, I'd like to ask our all-male guests here about the appeals of games to women. Do women play games? Is this changing? What do you think? Ian?
I think in numbers, a lot of the games are becoming less violent, so they're attracting women more to them.
Is this true of home games as well as arcade games?
I think more so of home games than of arcade games, because it's less dollar turnover.
Okay, do you think computer games encourage antisocial behavior? Do people leave society and go away back home and play games? What do you think about that? Larry?
I disagree with that completely. I deal with students, I deal with parents, and they say that the parents say that their children are staying at home more, especially the teenagers who like to go down to the arcades a lot. They're staying at home, and they're bringing their friends in. They're socializing there, and the parents are meeting their friends sometimes for the first time.
I see. Now, we've talked about some games that you can win, and some games that just seem to go on and on. You can get higher scores, but you never really win. Are these different games different in nature? Rick?
Yes, they are. One is a game which, because you never win it, the law of the game is that you keep coming back and trying to do better and better. The other game is goal-oriented. You are searching for one particular thing.
Say that, Larry.
I think the ones that you can't win, you're pitting against yourself. You're trying to better the score that you had last time.
Is that good?
I think it's good, yes. I enjoy that type of game.
Very good. Ian, do you have anything to add?
Some games are a challenge that are puzzle to solve, which are not exactly games that you can never win. You solve them, but once you've won, you discard them more or less, such as an adventure, because you don't play it again. But that's not necessarily bad either.
Okay, now if you like playing games, why would you computer? Why don't you buy simply one of those video games you can use at home? Is there any difference at all? Larry?
I think there's a lot of difference because you can do a lot more with a computer at home than just play games. And I would assume that most people who buy a computer, as opposed to just a dedicated games computer, want to do other things with it.
Okay, last question. What do you think is going to happen in games in the near future? Very quickly. Ian?
I think they're going to become far more sophisticated, and you're going to see a lot more strategy games and a lot more of the war concentration games coming up, and people get tired of arcade games.
Rick?
I think there's going to be a weeding out of some of the weaker games. We're going to see games with consistently good graphics.
Larry?
I think we're going to see much more realistic type of graphics that make the game seem to be more real.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, Ian, and Rick. And Jim and I will be right back to answer your questions.
Next on Bits and Bytes, computer graphics. Billy Van and Lou Bagoy will show us computer-generated pictures, some for the businessman and the scientist, and some just for fun. We'll find out what a pixel is and what high and low resolution means. That's the next edition of Bits and Bytes, and following it, Jack Livesley will be back with Jim Butterfield and guests for further exploration. Computer graphics on Bits and Bytes, followed by The Academy with Jack Livesley.
All right, Jim, here's the questions that have come in since our last show. I gather that the disk information is written into blocks called sectors. What happens if I try to write something that's too big to fit into a sector?
Okay, you don't need to worry about it. What happens is that the disk operating system, the DOS, will break the information into 2 sectors or 3 or more or however many, put them on the various places in the disk, and when you call that information back, it will be brought back together again. You don't even have to know that that's happening. It's all taken care of for you.
Right? Can I write both programs and data onto a single disk? And another registrant asks, can I use both disk and cassette tape together with the same program?
Yes, the answer in both cases is yes. You have a lot of discretion in doing those things. First of all, a lot of people find that a disk has a large amount of capacity, so you'll keep your programs and any data files that you want. Some people segregate them. You don't need to. Similarly, when you're handling data files, it's really up to your program to call for the files wherever they may be, and it might call for part of its information from a disk and a different part of the information from a cassette. So it's really up to you to organize things. You've got a lot of freedom there.
To mix and match.
To mix and match.
Right. I'd like to know about formatting. I know I need to format a disk before I use it, but why? And what happens when I do?
Well, of course, all that you do when you want to format a disk is you give the command to your computer, format, or sometimes it's called header, or sometimes it's called new, and the computer will do the job for you. But I want to talk a lot about why. When you buy a disk at your computer store, it's absolutely blank. There is nothing written on that disk at all. And what that means is it's very difficult then to read information. The disk may be spinning, but if the reading head is in there, it couldn't tell where in the world Sector 14 was or Sector 3 or everything else. There's no information. The disk can't get its bearings, and what does get its bearings is to write special marks on the disk. When you format the disk, you write magnetically on the surface of the disk marks that say where you are. Now as the disk rotates, if I want track number, say, 8, the disk will rotate looking at these marks and finally will say, aha, this is 8. I'll find the data right in here behind the mark that says 8. That's the format. We write down a directory right on the surface of the disk. That's what happens.
When a computer's memory size is quoted, e.g. a zapper bit with 16K, the figure usually refers to RAM only. Why?
Well, most people are interested in the amount of work area they have to put their programs and their data. So they're interested in the amount of RAM available. Now, if you quote the amount of ROM available in the computer, and sometimes that happens, you're telling people about the amount of built-in use that's already built into the computer. And that's fine, but you can't use it. It's pre-written. RAM is available for use. So when people would, because they want to know how much space is going to be available. So usually RAM is the figure that people look for first.
Very quickly, Jim, here's the last one. Basic program lines are often numbered in tens starting at 100. For example, line 100, then 100, then 120, so on. What's the advantages of such a scheme?
Okay, the idea is that when you jump your numbers along 10 at a time, you have space to put extra lines in that you may have forgotten when you first write the program. And to start at 100, you leave lots of space at the beginning because people often think of a lot of good things to put at the start of their program that will make the program neat. It will title it up and it will make things happen at the start. So usually then you leave that thing, it leaves your options open.
Thanks very much, Jim. Next time, computer graphics. Jack Livesley with Jim Butterfield saying, join us then on The Academy.